Since we are talking about difficult choices, you've presided over policymaking in India at a time where it was an exciting period. You had high growth. There have been some experimental decisions that Prime Minister has taken, demonetization for one. Given as a key player of the administration, given the first-hand account you have about how things are and given the limitations, what would your prescription be, maybe 3 policy steps that India needs to take or Prime Minister Modi needs to take in the remaining 2 years of his administration?
Well, I think, I don't think in terms of 3 steps or 2 steps or 5. Reforming the economy is a continuous process and it has to be done really in nearly all fields. It's not as though at any point in time the government can take action only in health or only in education or only in such and such. Generally, there are separate ministries for all different areas and the action moves in all these areas. What I could say is that, first, the government has already taken some very bold steps. You mentioned demonetization, but also I think, the GST, the Goods and Services Tax, a really major reform, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Act, major reform, several things in the pipeline, the medical education reform that we have proposed from Niti Aayog on setting up a new Medical Commission of India in place of the Medical Council of India as it currently exists. That's in the pipeline, very important. I think we need to complete that reform. We are also recommending here some reforms on the higher education system, which would involve autonomy both to the universities and some of the colleges. That's a reform which must be completed. So ongoing agenda obviously must be completed. We should move forward in that direction. But in terms of the priorities, I would say I think our priority remains job creation, good jobs where workers can workers have high productivity and they also get a bit higher wages, and so that clearly ought to be the long-term sort of goal, and whatever measures are necessary to make that happen, the government should continue to take.
Do you think that what should be done to maybe create a conducive atmosphere for sort of federal legislation towards easing some of the labor laws right now?
Well, you see, for federal, meaning the laws are federal.
Yeah.
But what we have been doing is in the reform of those laws through the state instrumentality. Yeah. We could also reform at the federal level itself, which will of course change those laws over the entire country. Yeah. Whereas when we do it through the state instrumentality, it is only in that state that the law is changed. Now, the difficulty so far has been that the central government really has not had the necessary votes in the Rajya Sabha, so such reform could not have been done. As and when the situation improves with respect to the acceptability of these reforms at the federal level, particularly in the Rajya Sabha, it can be considered at that level also. Now, Labour Ministry has been considering some changes, at least creating 4 different codes and therefore unifying the existing disparate labor laws, which are said to be over 40. There are currently about over 40 federal labor legislations, which the Labour Ministry is considering consolidating into 4 separate codes. So that process is also ongoing, but at the moment I would say we should continue to progress on the state track also, because there is some uncertainty as to whether the same reform will be acceptable at the federal level.